Today on CRED, we discuss the harsh reality of breaking down in our 2025 Jeep Wrangler. Now, before we start this video, let us preface that this is not in any means bashing Jeep, bashing corporate, anything like that. We do that enough on some of our other videos. This is explaining what we learned in a situation that we just had happen to us, 3 days ago? And I just think there are a lot of key takeaways from this instance that we've both learned because Ryan and I were in the Jeep, and what maybe you could do to, I would say, maybe prevent it or be more prepared while it happened. So let's talk about the story of what happened, because honestly, it's quite interesting. A few days ago, we had found a local upholstery shop. Well, I say local, they were about an hour and a half away, and they were recommended by a few folks. So we drove down there to discuss what we're gonna do to the interior of our 41 build. We had a chance to meet with them, talk about some color samples, and then eventually actually lock down what color we're going with. We will get to that in a further video. So the preface of this is we're an hour and a half away. We just had a great meeting, and we're about to hit the road to head home. About 5 minutes into our drive, we're going along about a 55-mile-an-hour highway. About 5 lights flash on the dash, and I'm not sure what's going on. I look down at the dash, and then the RPMs start fluctuating and start bubbling around, and then all of a sudden the RPMs go to 0.
It just shut off. It was about right at that curve over there. It was like, I didn't even know what was happening. The RPMs completely dropped off, and it was like pull over and shift to park to restart.
That means the engine's off. So the engine just shut off and it said shift to park to restart, and all these lights are flashing. So I had immediately veer off the side of the road and park safely. Now, one thing I'm glad is that it didn't lock up the steering wheel. I still had a little bit of power steering. I was able to park safely, or at least get it off the road. The moment all of this happened, my initial thought was, oh no, what just happened? Because this is not normal to have all these lights flashing, engine shut off while you're driving. My head was just panicked right away. We get pulled over, I shifted into park, and I'm just telling Ryan, I'm like, dude, this thing just shut off. Because you're like, what the hell just happened, Matt? And I'm like, it just shut off. Luckily, we weren't on 81 or a highway. I put it in park. I'm like, all right, maybe it was just a glitch. Maybe something went wrong. We were just idling. We were on a phone call for about an hour, sitting there idling. Maybe something glitched out. Go to hit the start button. Just cranking. No start. And I'm like, that's really not good. Smell of fuel coming out of the back. It said low oil pressure. All these lights are still on. Press start again. What else do you do? Just press start again. See if the thing starts. Press start again. Finally, after 6 or 7 tries, I got it to fire up, and it was just blah, 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 and then it just died again. And I'm like, a little bit of white smoke out of the back, and I was just like, I will not say the expletives I said, but I was just like, this is not good. When you have a Jeep with 2,000 miles that's brand new doing this, either something just chewed itself up in the engine. I didn't know what happened. Let's throw it in park. At the time, the Taser was telling us there was 38 diagnostic trouble codes, DTCs, stored in the system. Now, if you guys know anything about error codes or DTCs, 38 is probably about 38 more than you want to have on a Jeep. So I popped the hood, and this is where it's the harsh reality of having any brand new vehicle is underneath the hood. I couldn't diagnose or fix anything myself. We had battery, we had starter, we had fuel in the vehicle. It was just cranking and giving me a ton of error messages. I did play with a couple connectors, trying to make sure they were all seated, the map connectors, some of these hoses, some of the connectors that I could get to. Nothing fixed it. We are working on basically a rolling computer at this point. And that was, I think, the scariest part of all of this is that I own a 96 Dodge Ram 2500. I'm used to YJs, CJ7s, where if it pulls over and something's going on, it might be a simple fix. Or the starter's not turning, you go in there, smack it with a hammer a little bit, maybe you can get it to start to at least crank home. These vehicles are rolling computers, and there was nothing that I could do to get it to restart. And the harsh reality of all of this is it kind of made us really think, how could we prepare for an instance like this a little bit better? I think the first thing that I would say is we really need to outfit our Jeep with the toolkit. Ryan, you can agree, because this Jeep is in the build process. There was no tools, no jump pack, no nothing. So we got to reach out to Kendra at All Trade, get a Jeep roll pack, get a battery jump pack, get some things in the back. Second thing, I like to keep some spare clothes, pants, maybe a hoodie, something in there that we can charge our phones. We should probably outfit all of our Jeeps a little bit better with that. The third thing, one that I'll actually recommend, the Azuto interior lights, we actually use those as emergency flashers. So we pulled both the lights out, had them on the back of the Jeep, and it was at least flashing, because where we broke down was about a 60-mile-an-hour zone, and tractor trailers were probably going like 80 past our Jeep. You could feel the Jeep shaking. And I think with all of this, it just really, it kind of shed light on the fact that we just had no control. Like, that was the scariest part, is like, it broke down. I couldn't get it to restart. It wasn't the battery. It wasn't something simple. I could not fix this. And then we picked up the phone and started the process of calling a tow truck. So we called Stellantis Roadside Services after I used the internet to try and schedule one. We got home, we made it home, but I'll give you some caveats. Stellantis, they want to send the Jeep to the local dealership in the area. We were out of town, I would say an hour and a half away. It was trying to get us to the local ones, and if I selected our local dealership, which is an hour and a half away, it completely glitched up and forced us to call them. And the gentleman on the phone wanted to send us to an electrical supply store in Lebanon instead of the dealership. Mopar Roadside Services was sending us to a non-Mopar dealer. Add that up in your head, Ryan. It's pretty easy to say if you're in a Mopar vehicle and you're calling Mopar Roadside, where do you want your Jeep towed? But I understand maybe I think you can still tow it to a private shop. Like, you could, if this was an older JK and you called Mopar Roadside, you can tow it to like your private shop. But we're sitting there for about 3 hours?
Just down here thumbing.
4 hours we waited. Luckily, there was a diner down the road, an inn, which had actually really good food, really good dessert, and we were able to sit there for a while.
Great spot to eat in 94 in New Oxford, PA. Never been. It's a good spot. I never would have had to come here.
But the entire time, I was just pondering what the heck happened to our Jeep. And that's what I think is the key takeaway of this, is what happened to the Jeep, right? Like, I'm sitting there trying to eat lunch, and I'm like, this is not good. This is not good.
Creme de cacao, liqueur. They got coffees too.
2,000 miles. Do we have something catastrophic underneath this? And I'm immediately thinking, we've got Daytona in 6 weeks. We've got shows to go to. We're about to do the interior. We can't have our Jeep sitting at a dealership for a God knows amount of time. And by the errors it was having, my fear was the worst, because that's when you have all this happening, low oil pressure, this light, that light, this could have been something catastrophic. So we get home. We had a very interesting ride in the tow truck. Our tow truck driver had his little pal with him, a little probably 5-pound Chihuahua that rode with us. And I got to tell you, Ryan and I have been in so many like crazy stories that they're just like, they're better memories at this point. We've driven through 2 foot of snow in West Virginia, making it down to Dan Cummins. We have just all these random stories. So we get home at about 8 o'clock at night, and we broke down at 2 o'clock. So it's a long day. We get home. I drop it off the dealership. The next day, this is where you guys are really going to want to listen up if you're curious as to what happened. I get a call from the dealership, and they're like, hey, it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We had your Jeep for a few hours. We figured out what was wrong with it. And I'm like, okay, moment of truth. This is about to be really bad or really good. So we go in and we talk to the tech, and his name was Matt, so you know that the service was going to be phenomenal. He pulled it in, he got the codes pulled, and he was like, there was just a ton. I want to say there was at least 20 plus codes on this, which that is not a good sign. So he's initially looking at oil pressure sensors, map sensors, fuel pressure sensors, system sensors, all the main CAN bus connectors, engine harness, all of it. He's trying to find exactly where that problem point is. He's checking connectors, making sure that they're tight, making sure that the pins are good, until he found the culprit. There was a camshaft sensor, and I'm not exactly sure which sensor it was, but it was a low voltage, a 5-volt sensor in the camshaft sensor. And the pin into that connector was loose, and it was coming out. So just like, you insert a pin, you hear the click, then you connect it, it's tight. This pin was loose, causing an intermittent connection. And I think maybe by idling, it heated up a little bit, moved around, and then lost connection. The problem with the specific connector, what happened to it, is that connector on the camshaft sensor triggers all sorts of other connectors to have faults. All of these other sensors, including map, fuel pressure, air pressure, like anything connected to that is relying on that sensor to tell it how much to give or how much to not give. So as soon as that went out, everything else was just like, oh, no. And everything else just went down. Think of a domino effect. We were pushing the first domino, they all fell over, and there was nothing that the Jeep could do. But it brings me back to my first point. That's why I felt like we were so dead in the water. And that was such a crazy feeling for me, because I would have never been able to diagnose that on the side of the road, Ryan. Like, there was 20 other connectors he said were tied to that sensor. I'm not a Mopar tech, and unless you have like full Mopar backlog diagnostic tools, you're not gonna see exactly what sensor is going wrong. Now, we did have a good idea, and it was funny actually, because our tow truck driver, Juan, he said camshaft sensor. Like, he was saying camshaft or crankshaft sensor made sense for what errors were going on. So if you're watching this, he nailed it on the head. I mean, that's what was going on. But the craziest thing is just that you never know if this can happen to you or when. Now, our Jeep had 2,100 miles when this happened, and I'm glad it presented itself to us now and not 6 weeks from now while driving to Florida in the middle of another state somewhere. But the thing is, it can happen to any vehicle. Our tow truck driver actually said just a few weeks prior, he had picked up a vehicle with 9 miles on it that the engine was destroyed. I've seen another YouTuber, guy out in their shop, it's like Dave's Diesel Performance, they had a Cadillac, a brand new one, the LS chewed itself up in like 20 miles, and they wanted to break down the engine and see what happened. So can it happen to your vehicle? Absolutely it can. In our case, it was a loose connector that I wouldn't have been able to find on the side of the road, and that was the only thing we could have done with it, is to get it towed home and get it fixed. And like I said in the beginning, this isn't to bash Jeep. It isn't to bash quality control, because things happen. One loose connector can turn into a myriad of other issues. And we saw pretty much, not the worst of it, I don't want to say the worst of it, but we saw what could happen. And I think there's a lot of key takeaways from this. Not that we bashed anything, but I don't know. Maybe the biggest thing is to like have a plan if your Jeep or vehicle does break down, because we really didn't. I mean, we're calling Stellantis roadside and they're throwing us all over the place. My mom's always said the AAA memberships are fantastic, and now I guess I do believe her, because we were sitting there stuck on the side of the road. And I would say that if you don't have things prepared in your Jeep for an instance like that, maybe it's a good time to do so, because this could happen to any vehicle on the road. And I would say making sure that you, your family, your loved ones are safe inside, have the right marker gear on the outside to be able to have some flashers. And while the Azuto was great, we might add on some orange strobe flasher packs in the back just so people can see, because our Jeep is not a very bright color in the 41, and it was blending right in to the trees behind it. But luckily for us, we were able to break down on a major highway. But if you're lost on the trail, we'd like to thank today's sponsor of our video, Onyx Off-Road. They utilize all sorts of mapping technology to help locate where you're at on the trail or on the road and be able to hopefully find your way to safety. Not only that, we're traveling down to Daytona here in a few weeks, and you best believe that we'll be using Onyx Off-Road to help explore local trails and have some fun while we're down there. If you guys want to save some money on an Onyx Off-Road subscription, be sure to look down below in the description where we've got a great coupon code for you. Well guys, that's a wrap on today's video. Luckily, our 41 build is safe and sound, and it is back here at our house and is ready to continue the build before it is done, or at least somewhat done before Daytona. Thank you guys for watching so far, and if you haven't yet, be sure to check out our interior floor lighting video. Those things have been flying off the shelves, so huge thanks to everyone that has purchased a set of those. And don't worry, we will be coming out with some new products based upon your feedback. So I wanted to thank you guys all for those comments, which have been absolutely incredible. So thank you guys for watching this one. I hope you enjoyed it, and maybe this can help prevent a little bit of some foreseeable issues with your Jeep. Till next time though, Ryan's behind the camera and I'm here talking to you, and we want you to get out there and earn yours.